Excellence is not a gift, but a skill that takes practice. We do not act rightly because we are excellent. In fact, we achieve excellence by acting rightly. Plato. During my investigation into the myth or legend of Atlantis, I came across this quote, and it didn't seem relevant at the time, but it kind of stuck with me. In today's video, I would like to expound on this because I think it has a lot to do with where we are going, and it gives us an insight into some mysteries of the ancient world. The first place we need to stop is here. I've talked about this before. This is an image created for the game Assassin's Creed Odyssey. This is the Fate of Atlantis DLC. They did a very good job of the detail on this city. It's an incredibly complex layout, but you can tell a lot of thought went into it. And if this truly were, as Plato described, there would be huge advantages to laying out a city this way. One of the big advantages that I don't think a lot of people have seen, we talked about how it would spread people out in another video, but it would also do something else. By spreading people out, you reduce the likelihood of criminal activity. And that's been proven over and over and over again. The farther apart people live, the more space they have, the less crime occurs. Now, what does that have to do with the ancient world? What does that have to do with where we are in our country right now? We look at the wonders of the ancient world, and people scratch their heads. How did they do this? And more importantly, why did they do this? Well, the idea that came to my mind was this. In the ancient world, it was a very dangerous place. They didn't have the governmental level of organization that we have today, the economic level of organization that we have today. I truly believe a lot of these projects were created to give people a purpose other than criminality. It would have taken legions of workers to create these, but it would have given the society, the group, a mission in life. And when we look at 2020, the lockdown year, we can see a lot of people who lost, quote unquote, their mission in life, for lack of a better term there. And they turned to criminal activity, the events of last summer. We see in the ancient world these big cities. We have Machu Picchu on the left. We have Mohenjo-Daro in Pakistan on the right. Abandoned. And people don't understand why. Well, when you cram people into tiny little areas like this, and if the largest portion of them don't have some type of a mission in life, the number one activity is going to be crime. People don't change. People were much like they were thousands of years ago. We just put on the trappings of the modern day. I think it's not a very attractive explanation, but I think this explains a lot of it. And there is another piece of evidence for this, and it goes back to Plato. There are two events that occur right around the same time. We have Plato's description of the destruction of Atlantis on the right. And here's the quote. But afterwards there occurred violent earthquakes and floods, and in a single day and night of misfortune all your warlike men in a body sank into the earth, and the island of Atlantis in like manner disappeared in the depths of the sea. Now, right around and just after this same time, there is this story of what they call the Sea Peoples arriving in the Mediterranean. Ancient Egypt, for example, was repeatedly attacked by a mysterious army of massive warships. The raiders suddenly showed up around 1250 BCE and continued attacking until they were defeated by Ramses III. No record of them exists past 1178 BCE, and scholars continue to debate theories about where they went, where they came from, and who they were. So everyone calls them the Sea People. I believe these two stories are talking about the same group of people. That there could have been, with a society like Atlantis, a large part of their population, a large group, perhaps their military, that were out at sea. Think of all of the people we have out at sea right now on aircraft carriers and destroyers, cruisers everywhere. If something were to happen here, they would be left without a port to go back to. What would they turn to at that point? Well, for sheer survival, it's my personal belief that they would turn to crime. In fact, in this game, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that's a lot of what you deal with. And I was on Twitch streaming this last night, and it occurred to me that that would be a big part of the ancient world, a lot of what you were dealing with. In fact, the main character in that show is pretty much a criminal, him or herself, depending on which character you play. And here's the real part that I think people miss. And this is a difficult thing to grasp, at least as far as the modern society goes. What we're facing now with the contrast between Florida and the lockdown states. We still have law and order here in Florida. We still have people that behave in a civilized manner because things have been normal for nearly a year now. Generally speaking, we lifted our own lockdown last spring, and we've been fully open for quite some time. We've still had some minor things, inconveniences mainly to deal with, but primarily speaking, Florida is way ahead of the curve compared to Michigan, California, New York, those places. Taxes are just morally justified theft. Income taxes. All it is a government morally justifying taking money from one group of people and giving it to another because of historically this or historically that, blah, 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 blah. It's just morally justified thuggery. But when everything falls apart and that all goes away, people who've been the recipients of that are just going to continue to be thugs in just a non-morally justified way. Meaning those who have petitioned government to be a thug on their behalf are just going to just take that up for themselves. And that's what's going to happen. You're going to see an increase in this in the lockdown states. If they can't count on government after this last check goes away, they'll just do it themselves. Because they've already, in their own minds, every thug does, every criminal does, justifies their criminal behavior. Well, I had this disadvantage, or I had that disadvantage, or I need this, or I need that. See, that transmutes from the ancient world to the modern world, that same thinking process. And there are going to be, I believe in our future, abandoned cities. We're already seeing the beginning of it now. People fleeing the big cities, fleeing Detroit, fleeing Minneapolis, LA, California, the giant flight out of the major cities and into places in the South that are more spread out, more suburban. This is the key. I think it explains a lot of these ancient abandoned cities, the Inca civilization, Peru, Machu Picchu, Mohenjo-Daro, all of these ancient cities where they don't find very many remains. They find evidence that people used to live there, but they don't find enough people to warrant it being a whole city. Why did they abandon these ancient cities? This is what I believe happened. This is truly what I believe happened, is that they crammed a bunch of people into a large group. Hopefully that was going to create some kind of a economic advantage, and all it created was an opportunity for more crime. And it needed more and more and more and more government. Eventually government always fails. We have an event like this. Government has failed, has it not? I think history is going to see 2020 as the failure of government and a complete exodus from one place to another. And whether certain groups of people want to believe it or not, excellence is not a gift. It's a skill. It takes practice. We do not act rightly simply because we are excellent people. We achieve excellence by acting rightly. This is probably the best explanation for Governor DeSantis, by the way. See, he wasn't just born this excellent guy. It takes practice, and picking him up and transplanting him in 2024 to D.C. won't change D.C. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. Probably the most offensive thing I've ever heard of is Trump DeSantis. That's just literally the most offensive thing I've ever heard of. Because we truly see what excellence is when we see Governor DeSantis. We don't hear whining about unfairness. We don't see finger pointing. We don't hear name calling. He doesn't speak in large, broad, sweeping platitudes. And he doesn't call himself anybody's savior by name. So anyway, I will leave it there. Have a great weekend. God bless. Thank you, everyone who supports me over on Twitch. We're there every night from about 9:30, 10 o'clock, till usually around midnight. So if you want to join us over there, that would be great. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you next time.